Hi, my name is Lauren Shields, and I selected David Bloome as my narrative spotlight. I chose him because of his work on education, specifically on reading, narratives, and discourse analysis. He is interested in how people use written language to construct knowledge and learning opportunities. In terms of my own work, his practices around discourse analysis and focus on reading and writing resonated with me. I enjoy using discourse analysis to study talk patterns in the discourse used in elementary school classrooms. Here you can see some of Bloome's education. So he received a bachelor's from the University of Connecticut, a master's from the State University of New York at Albany, and his PhD from Kent State University. You will see towards the bottom that he participated in a graduate study, again at the University of New York at Albany, and then a program at Oxford University. So Bloome's career. He examined reading as a social practice. He looked at ethnographies of communication to written language. He published a series of studies on the social construction of intertextuality in classroom reading and writing events. He worked to redefine reading and the intertextuality from the perspective of social constructionism. He's worked on many collaborative projects with Susan Goldman and Anne Egan Robertson, and these are just two that he typically has worked with in the past. From his CV, I was able to see that he has produced 5 books, edited 5 books, produced 30 journal articles, contributed to 37 book chapters, added 13 annual reviews, encyclopedia articles, and yearbook chapters, and has 29 miscellaneous publications and written products, and also 9 book reviews. To say the least, he's been very busy. But again, this CV has only been updated in 2017, so there are still some things that he's missing from here. He started publishing in 1979 with a piece titled Saturday Morning Children's Television Commercials, a socio-linguistic perspective. His first narrative was published in the late 90s, and he started his publishing and editing career in the 70s. Early in his career, he focused on reading as a social practice, then began examining and theorizing around ethnography and looking at how reading in the classroom occurs. His research and his teaching are grounded in his experiences as a former language arts and reading teacher. His work with narratives, here you can see some of the grants and publications that he has done around narrative and narrative inquiry. Some of these I've actually read, and I've included in the references as well as the bibliography. Bloome's academic background. So his education, he was a former middle school and high school ELA teacher, like I said, where a lot of his research and experiences come from. His current role, he's currently employed as a professor at the Ohio State University in the Department of Teaching and Learning. He serves as the director of the Center for Video Ethnography and Discourse Analysis, and he acts as the co-director of the Columbus Area Writing Project. His past employment has included various universities, the Vanderbilt University, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, Cleveland State University, and the University of Sussex at Brighton. Although I was unable to find if he had any influences or mentors, I will reference though later on some of the people that he does draw from. His field of study looks at Jewish literature for children, and in particular literature for children grounded in Yiddish culture and language, discourse analysis and education, and the ethnographic study of reading, writing, and literacy in classrooms and communities, and focuses on how people use spoken and written language for learning in classroom and non-classroom settings, how people use language to create and maintain social relationships, to construct knowledge, and to create communities, social institutions, and shared histories and futures. Here you can see some of the areas of narrative inquiry that Bloome draws from. So again, he is looking at the narrative development in young children, storytelling, narrative as a text, and narrative as a performance. And these are 2 different narrative styles that he goes into in many of his articles that focus on narrative and narrative inquiry. spoken and written narratives, and narrative ethnographies. So theoretical influences in Bloome's work, he pulls from Bakhtin, Foucault, and Vygotsky, theoretical constructs and methodological principles from Erikson and Schultz, Gumpertz, Green, and Wallet, and he revisits these later. He uses sociocultural frameworks and Street's ideological model of literacy. Some main ideas and contributions to take away from this. He extends the research on narratives of young children. He points out a tension between narrative as a text and narrative as a performance. He addresses how schools focus more on narrative as text, provides solutions to educational structures reflected in reading education for young children grounded in an autonomous model, adds to research organized around ethnographic principles, draws attention to reading and writing as a joint practice and not as separable social practices, and describes storytelling practices through his storytelling project, and many of his narrative articles focus on this project. So Bloome's work with narrative, currently he focuses on narrative development among young children as a foundation for learning and literacy development in schools. This is one of the 6 areas related to writing and reading education that he focuses on. Much of his work and research focuses on ethnographic studies using qualitative methods. He tends to focus on providing deep narrative descriptions that set the stage for his readers. His work with narratives focus on young children, their stories, and how they develop a repertoire of spoken and written narrative styles and narrative discourse. Here are some of the references that I used to study David Bloome. What I learned from David Bloome's work is that I like discourse analysis a lot more than I thought. Like I said, some of his work did focus on discourse analysis, and I found myself enjoying it. I would recommend these articles around discourse analysis as well as the narrative pieces, and I've included them in my bibliography. Something that I was very surprised to find out that he was a visiting Fulbright scholar, and he has been inducted into the Reading Hall of Fame and holds many leadership positions in professional organizations such as AERA and National Council of Teachers of English. I hope you guys enjoyed David Bloome. Feel free to ask me any questions on the discussion board, and I will happily get back to you. But again, I hope you enjoyed David Bloome. Thank you.